welcome to our webinar today on managing change in small business, knowing which way to go. What we're going to be covering today is looking at how changes affect small business and what are some of the things that you could be doing to plan for them better and also to reduce the negative impact of any changes. So we're going to have a look at what causes change and how people respond, and then look at what would be an appropriate strategy for you to manage change more effectively in your small business. So before we go ahead, just a little bit of housekeeping. We're using Zoom webinar. You'll be able to put some questions in the Q&A, which is in the panel, and we'll try and answer any questions that come up during the course of the presentation. If you got other browsers open, then your video experience will be better by closing some of those other browsers. So we're going to get started. So a little bit about me to start with. My name is Paul Sweeney. I'm the founder of Pretium Solutions, and we exist to help you as the small business owner have the business that you want and not just the business that you have. Looking to work with you to increase the value of your business, provide the freedoms that you want, the flexibility, and have a better business making more profit. So we're talking about change and why you need to be proactive and not reactive. I don't know if you're familiar with Alice in Wonderland, but there's a scene in there where Alice meets the Cheshire Cat and asks, would you tell me please which way I ought to go from here? And the cat responds that depends a good deal on where you want to go. Alice says, I don't much care where. The Cheshire Cat says, then it doesn't matter much which way you go. Alice says, so long as I get somewhere. Oh, you're sure to do that if only you walk long enough. Now, why is that actually relevant? Why we're talking about this at the moment? It is an interesting question to ask, but the answer is perhaps more interesting. So if you don't know where you want to go or what you're actually heading to, then it doesn't matter which direction you take or which path you take, because you'll end up somewhere which is where you were heading anyway. Now, how does that affect change? Change affects the directions or the direct routes that we need to take in whichever actions we're choosing to do. And sometimes change forces us to make detours along the way to adopt changed strategy or to implement new things as a result of changes. Now, if we don't know the direction that we're heading, or we don't know where we want to end up, then we don't need really to plan much for the change. We can just react to it or get pushed along and wander along on the same path that we're going. But if we do have a plan, a very definite purpose about where we want to head, what we want to achieve with our business, then how we manage change and how we react to change is important, because some changes will put us off course and some we need to make adjustments so that we can get back on target as a result. Some changes will make it longer for us to get to that end point. Others will help us to improve or maybe even get to that goal quicker. So how we manage change is really important. Now, there are two options we have here. One is to be proactive, where we decide how we're going to react and how we're going to manage change. And the other one is reactive. The reactive is certainly the way Alice was going in Wonderland, just reacting to wherever the path would lead her. Many business owners run their business that way, just reacting to change and not taking control. So what kind of changes are we talking about here? We're talking about a number of changes, because your business is constantly facing changes from a variety of areas. Now, some of the more common ones that you will come across are things like legislation. So when the government makes changes to taxes or rules, or increases licensing requirements, increases the obligations that you have in terms of warranties you provide, who can actually trade in certain areas. So legislation can be changed and we can't control that. Another one is the change in product. So if we are supplying a particular product, that product may become out of date. It might become obsolete. So looking back at VHS videos are no longer up to date. They've been replaced by DVDs, which now being replaced by Blu-ray and even streaming services. So the products that we have can be subject to change, and those changes are not necessarily something that we control. Your customer expectations as well can affect change on your business. So in the past, we would expect to wait a long time, so maybe 5, 10, 20 days for a piece of mail to arrive in our mailbox, our physical mailbox. Now we have an expectation that when we send off a response via email or text or a social media application, that we'll get an instant response because we are able to send the message instantly. So our expectations upon us from our customers have changed and can change. So depending on also what they believe is the current standard for service. So that's also something that we don't necessarily have control over. And market conditions. Market conditions are not just talking about your local market in your local area or even your country, but bigger changes. So in 2007, when the GFC hit, that was a worldwide event that affected the local markets here. And it was, again, something that we couldn't control, something that a lot of people couldn't foresee happening as well. But markets do change. And also seasonal markets, so where you depend on seasonal produce or seasonal conditions, those conditions are subject to change. So it might be if your product depends on certain temperatures at times of year, and if the season, the weather is not matching those your expectations or your customers, then the demand for your product is going to change as a result. So if we have a very cool summer, then the need for air conditioning services is not going to be as high in summer. Employees can also be a cause of change. So when you lose a key employee, that can have big changes, big impact on how you run your business and how things get done, particularly if they've been a long-standing employee. Also hiring employees and bringing in new employees with new skills or needing to be trained, or a different cultural approach that doesn't match with your existing business culture. Those are all changes. So any change to your employee structure can affect your business. And then there's the last one, which is the more proactive one, is deliberately choosing to make a change in your business and how you operate. Now, that could be as a result of determining that you want to change the way that you run, that you want to deliberately target a particular customer group. So you're going to change the supply, the marketing messages that you put out there, and that will flow through to all of the processes in production and sourcing of products, supply, right through to the people you engage to do that. So you can deliberately choose to make changes in your business, and they are probably the ones that we're going to focus on a lot more. In terms of, you have the choice to do them and you can make better plans. The other changes that we've mentioned are generally outside of your control, mostly outside of your control, but there are still steps that you can take to minimize the negative impact of those changes. So we're going to look at the key thing here is, how do you respond to change? How are you, the business owner, going to respond to changes, particularly those changes that you don't have control about whether they happen or not? So there's a number of different ways that we can respond. One would be to embrace that change and to move forward, to adapt our business and grow with that change, or use that change as a catalyst for improving the way we do things. There's the opposite, where people are resentful of change, don't like to do it, make a lot of noise about it, are generally unhappy, and don't see any positives from it. And that negative approach so eats away at any other positive impact or positive approach to managing change. There's always a chance to ignore change and just pretend it didn't happen, to continue going on. When we're talking about legislative changes, that's generally not a good idea, because even if you choose to ignore the rules, they still exist, and there can be penalties imposed on you if you ignore them, particularly where we're looking at changes to, say, taxation or road rules, or any other kind of government rule which legislates a particular kind of behaviour. We can fight the change, we can lobby against it, which is only really possible when we're talking about legislation. We can't fight changes to do with market conditions, products, customers, seasons. But in terms of legislation, fight is often a response that we hear, particularly when legislative changes are talked about. There's often a fight put up by industry bodies who don't like the changes being proposed and think they'll have negative consequences for industry as a whole and businesses. So fight is usually how we respond when we know change is coming and we think we can still prevent that change from happening. And the last option there is quit. And this is something that in the accounting industry, we've seen a number of stages where accountants have actually quit the industry as a result of change. So in 2000 in Australia was the introduction of GST, and a lot of accounting practitioners took that opportunity as a signal to retire from the industry or to change their career path and move into fields outside of accounting, rather than relearn a new skill or put up with a massive change to the taxation system in Australia. That was one option for them, was to quit and not have to deal with the change. In quitting, though, they did actually require themselves to cope with some change, because they had to change their circumstances from being fully engaged in business to either retiring or looking for another career path. So quit is actually not necessarily a way of dealing with change. So our options then are to really, we have the options to adapt, to profit from it and grow. And I think that is the way that we need to move forward as business owners in terms of managing how change affects us, and taking a more proactive approach and being in control, making the decisions about how our business is going to respond to change. So if we can implement these changes effectively, we can actually use this as an opportunity to grow our business. We can grow more revenue by changing our methods, changing our approach, our targets, getting better informed about our sales, customers, and our process. We can become more efficient, because some changes have forced business to become more efficient. I talked earlier about the implementation of GST in Australia, and that forced a lot of businesses to implement computerized or desktop accounting processes to get better control of their information, which then led into them having more control over their sales process. Their sales became more electronic. They had better records of their stock, better records of what stock was selling and how much stock they actually had on hand. So better knowledge about their business, so that they could make decisions that were informed and based on some facts, rather than going by gut feel. And those businesses generally became stronger as a result. It was a better outcome to manage that change and be proactive and actually deal with it by having a plan of how you were going to implement change, how you were going to use that change for opportunity for you. Much better outcome when you actually take control of the process, make decisions about what you're going to do to manage change, what the outcomes you expect from those different measures you're going to put in to measure to deal with change, and then how effective are those new processes or new decisions being in terms of managing, not only managing change, but actually helping your business to grow stronger and be more profitable. So we'd like to think that we have that luxury of wandering aimlessly and just taking things as they come. But as a business owner, the only outcome from that is really disaster. And you usually end up in a situation where your business is unprofitable, and you also can be in a point of being bankrupt or insolvent, which is not an outcome that we want. We go into business to provide financial freedom, time, savings, the ability. Our business is there to help us enjoy the things that matter. So when our business is not profitable, we can't have access to those things that we really enjoy. So wandering aimlessly, not an option for us as a business owner. We do need to take more control of that. Now, I put this scenario to a number of business owners back when the GFC was on, and the choice was there to ride out the wave, to just accept the conditions and just wait for the recovery to happen. And a number of business owners took that option, and 3 to 5 years later, they were still in recovery mode. Cash flow was very tight, profit margins were scarce, they had to discount, they didn't have employees on deck. Things were very tight, and they were tight for a large period afterwards. On the other side, I did have the opportunity to work with some forward-thinking business owners who took this as an opportunity to look at how their business operated in terms of who were their employees and what could their employees do? How did their employees contribute to their sales? How did their employees contribute to a great customer experience? And who were the customers that they were dealing with? So those businesses where we invested time in looking at how do we manage our employees better? How do we actually hire better employees? How do we find those employees? And then looking at what's our strategy for growing customers? What are the things we're really good at? And can we keep doing that? Let's keep that message out there that we are the best at what we do, and we're going to keep acquiring customers and keep hiring good employees during that period, and have a plan for how we are going to grow our business. So looking at expanding our market share during this time when everybody else is really just coping with the poor economic conditions that were there for everybody. And those businesses, when the GFC was over, they weren't in that recovery phase. They were in the thriving phase, moving forward, and they captured so much more market share. They are now in a situation where a lot of them are actually oversubscribed with customers. They have too many customers for the amount of work that they have done. Even though they've expanded their capacity by 4 and 5 times, they still have more customers than they can actually deal with. So there is a queue of customers wanting to do business with them, and that's a great response. But it all came back to the decision to not just accept the changes that were there, but to manage the change and manage how they adapted to those changes. So I'm going to encourage you now to not wait for another wake-up call, not wait for another big event or legislative change to force you to change. You can make changes now, and it starts by planning and deciding to change. So don't wait for those big events. You can make small changes now that don't have a lot of disruption to your business, but they can have a key and a large ongoing impact on your profit and the value of your business, and also the lifestyle that you live. So the decision now is, do I accept how things are and continue the way they are, or do I decide to make a plan on how I'm going to manage change in my business and even introduce some changes in the way that we do things here to create a better business? Now, I firmly believe that it is your advantage here to make that decision now and plan 3 things at least that you want to change in your business. And by change, we're not talking about negative change, we're talking about opportunities here. 3 things that you want to change for the better that you are going to do in your business, and make a note of those 3 things, and also put next to them, what do you expect the outcome of those changes to be? So what would you like to happen as a result of putting change in your business? So if you were going to change and introduce a new source of income, so you might be in sales, but you want to introduce a service component to what you do. So how are you going to introduce that service component? What do you expect the increase in profit to be for your business? And how are you going to go about doing it? What are the steps you need to take Who in your business is going to be responsible for that, and when is it going to happen by? What's the time frame you're going to put on it? So without putting some specific outcomes, steps in place, assign responsibility, and assign a time frame for it, you're less likely to actually implement a positive change for your business. It'll still be there as something that's on your to-do list, or a nice idea that when you get around to it, you'll do it. So be a lot more proactive and make a decision today to document that plan. Just write it down now, grab a sheet of paper, write it down, and then that's your simple plan on how you're going to manage your change in your small business. So once we've put that plan in place, so we've decided to make a change, we've created a plan, we need to act on that plan, and we need to make sure it is implemented. Implementation of plans is where a lot of the plans never actually work. They never work because they don't actually get done. So it's very important to take that next step and to do something. And that's why we want to focus on just 3 things today that you're going to change in your business, and take the first step. So what are the steps you need to take for each of those 3 things that you are going to change? And then commit to doing that. So be accountable. Tell somebody about what those changes are going to be and what you're going to do, and then ask to be followed up on that. Make yourself accountable for implementing the change. Now, that's something that we do a lot of with our clients, is that we help them to become more accountable for the plans that they have and the actions they're going to take. So accountability. So when we follow them up each month, our clients are actually telling us what they have done, what they struggled with, what they thought went really well, what they could have done better. But they are accountable in that they know we're going to ask the question, what did you do? Did you actually do it? And they're going to be able to say, yes, we did it, and this is the outcome that we achieved. So the review part of it is also important. So reviewing how effective that action was. So how effective was the plan that you put in place to manage change, and whether that's change that was forced upon your business by legislation or markets or products or customers, or whether you chose to make that change. How effective was your plan when you implemented it? Did it actually generate the outcome that you wanted? And did it generate the outcome at the level you wanted? Yes, you might have increased sales, but why didn't it increase sales as much as you thought? Or why did it take longer for sales to start coming? So we need to constantly review. And again, this is part of being accountable for your actions, and being accountable and sharing your plan with somebody like us at Pretium Solutions, who advise small business owners on how to grow their business. So by reviewing your plan regularly, you're able to identify if it's working the way it should, and how it can be improved. And the more regularly you review your plan, the quicker you can adapt it and adjust it to get a better outcome. So if it's not working and you leave it for 6 to 9 months before you actually have a look at whether it's really working, you've missed that opportunity to adjust it. And you may have only needed to do a slight adjustment to your process or to the target that you had, and it would have been more successful. But by not regularly reviewing, you've missed that opportunity. So we encourage you to not just decide to change, not just plan, not just implement, but actually review and be accountable for the results and the outcome. So when is the best time to start? The best time to start planning is before you actually started. And the second best time we say is right now. So I believe that if you start right now in terms of how you're going to manage change, whether it's change that you can control or change that you is forced upon you, you still have the benefits by having a strategy in place. And the benefits for your business are going to be, you are going to be in control. You're going to have more control over the outcomes or how change affects your business. By having a strategy in place, you can make deliberate steps on how to improve your business or how to overcome those changes for the better, not just in the short term, but in the long term. So we're looking at generating positive outcomes from your actions. So change can result in positive outcomes. There's a lot of view out there that change is a negative thing, that all change forced upon business is negative. But many changes have positive outcomes, and they are an opportunity to create those positive outcomes, those better running businesses, those more profitable businesses, and the ones that are much more fun to turn up to every day. I mentioned earlier, one benefit of change for some of our clients was the improved position in terms of competition. They actually used change to create competitive advantages. When everybody else was not doing anything, they took the initiative and put in place plans to improve their workforce, to improve their sales strategy, to improve their products. And when things did recover, they had a significant advantage over their competitors. And these are the businesses that we work with at the moment who have more customers than they need. And there's a queue to actually work with these clients. So profit is also a benefit of managing your change profitably, change deliberately. So when you do manage change deliberately, and it's effective management of those changes, the end result is likely to be more profit for your business. And more profit for your business will mean more freedom to enjoy your financial rewards, more freedom to enjoy those things that, they're the reason you went into business, for time with your family, for holidays, for travel, financial freedom, independence. These benefits of managing change all lead to satisfying the reasons why you created a business, why your business exists. So just recapping, what we want you to do in your next steps now is review what is on the horizon, what changes are likely to happen to your business, to your industry, to the economy. What do you know is likely to happen? And there's a lot of information out there, so we have a very good idea of what things are imminent, what changes are being talked about by our governments, and then we can identify what those changes will be. With all those changes, we can have a look at what is the risk to your business? What is the risk that these changes will have? So we talk about, say, a government reducing the capacity of people to operate in a particular field by increasing licensing requirements and training requirements. Then to manage that risk, you need to make sure that you prepare for that and get the licenses in place well ahead of time, avoid the last minute rush, and make sure that your business is trained in those new processes and systems. Reducing exposure to change. So maybe your business is affected by changes to a single market. So maybe you need to look outside of your current markets and introduce a new market to spread your risk by not being exposed so much to one market. Can you increase your market either geographically? Maybe you can try selling to a different age group or even a different product. But have a look at your risks. What are the exposures that you have? What's the worst case scenario? How is that going to impact your business, and what can you do to prevent it? Not just prevent, but sometimes, like we said earlier, when you take a deliberate approach to managing change, you can actually implement changes that are going to have positive outcomes. And so if one of your risks is that your sales fluctuate because of economic conditions or market conditions, by introducing a second or third market, you can spread your risk, but also increase your sales opportunities more broadly, which then leads to more profit. So having determined what those risks are and how your business is exposed to them, work out what you want to achieve. What's the outcome you want from this change? So do you want to have just no reduction in profit? That could be a simple goal, and that's fine. But you may want to say, well, hang on, I'm going to use this opportunity here to make some change in my business, and that I want to generate an extra $100,000 of profit as a result. So to put some dollar values, some measurable targets on those outcomes that you want to achieve from the changes that you're going to manage. So once you've determined the outcomes that you want, plan your actions, work out what you need to do to get to those outcomes. So what are the steps you're going to take? Who is going to do them? What tools do you need to use? and when by. So plan your actions, and also look at each stage of the action, what is the incremental benefit that's going to be there, so that at the end of the end time of the review, you will have achieved your goal. So if we say our goal is to increase our sales by 240,000 in the next year, then we'd be looking to increase our sales regularly over the year and not just in one lump sum. So we'd be looking at increasing our sales by, say, $20,000 per month. So we can put in place a more incremental action rather than trying to get one big increase in sales. And how do we know that's effective? Well, it comes down to monitoring our actions, monitoring the outcomes of our plan. So we need to have a good handle on our numbers, know your financial figures, know your sales, know where your customers are coming from. There is so much data out there that you really have no excuse for not having an idea of what your figures are. And more importantly, you need to understand what they mean. If that's something that you need some assistance with, then we are more than happy to help. Our goal is to actually help you grow your business, and that means understanding what the figures mean and how they impact on your profit, also how your actions actually impact on those figures and the profits that result. So just recapping, we need to look at what's on the horizon, what risks exist, what's our exposure, what are the outcomes we want to achieve, make a plan, implement, and monitor that plan. So thank you for joining us today. It's been good to have you here and talk about managing change in your business. And if you need to reach out to us with some further questions, we can be contacted here on any of the social media channels or via our website. So once again, thank you for joining us. And yeah, we're looking forward to hearing your stories about how you've managed change for the better. Thank you.